Hi, Michelle. How are you?
How are you?
Great.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to get started with you today.
Yeah, me too.
Hear your wisdom. So, all right, you're ready to get started?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Welcome back. Today's guest is Terry McDougall, and I am thrilled to chat with her today. Terry is an executive and career coach, speaker, and best-selling. Let me start that over. Welcome back to the podcast. Today's episode is about, all right, never mind. Try that again. Good thing I have a good editor. Welcome back to the podcast. Today's guest is Terry McDougall. Terry is an executive and career coach, speaker, and best-selling author of the book Winning the Game of Work: Career Happiness and Success on Your Own Terms. She works with managers, executives, and professionals who want to draw upon their greatest, most authentic abilities to positively impact their organizations. She supports clients who are creating change, driving innovation, and navigating transitions. After 30 years of corporate experience, Terry became an executive coach to concentrate on helping leaders fully step into their potential and lead satisfying careers. Welcome, Terry.
Michelle, it's so great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, let's start off. Tell me, what does success on your own terms mean? What do you mean by that?
That's so, it's interesting. When I was writing my book, I came across a bit of research that a professor at Harvard Business School did. His name's Tom DeLonge, and he studies high achievers. And what he discovered, or what his hypothesis is that high achievers are addicted to external validation.
Mm,
And that hit me like a ton of bricks whenever I read that, because I was always a high achiever. I did well in school. I'm a striver. And, when I thought back over my life, I thought, well, yeah, I can remember like in kindergarten and first grade getting that gold star at the top of the paper. And, over time, what happens is that we tend to put off gratification so that we can get those rewards. I
yeah.
mean, and that's what happens, right? I mean, when I was in high school, I mean, I was a little nerdy, but sometimes I might stay home on a Friday night to study if I had a test on Monday instead of going out with my friends. So we're delaying that gratification. We're putting off something that might be fun in the moment to get a reward later on.
Mhm.
And so, I say that I work with people that are successful but not satisfied.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is that from the outside, these people have the trappings of success. They're working for good companies, they're making a good salary, they have a great title, they've got the trappings of success. But a lot of times when I start talking to them, what I discover is they're not that happy, that they're paying a high price for the success. They're feeling stressed, they're feeling anxious, they're maybe investing more into work so that they can maintain that success, and then they don't have enough time and energy to actually enjoy it. And
Mhm.
so, it is sort of a loaded question to ask, like, what is success? I personally think that success is not success unless you can enjoy it. And somebody else's definition, or what the world says success is, a lot of times we're chasing that and we
Mhm.
might get it, and then we're like, okay, I got the brass ring, but I thought that I was going to feel different once
Yeah.
I got it, because
Yeah.
I've put so much off to get this, and now I
Mhm.
got it, and I'm like, okay, I'm still the same person, I still have the same problems, maybe I have more money in my paycheck, but so at some point, I think it's really important to start shifting that search for external validation back to getting in touch with our own inner wisdom and our own self validation, because we're able to do that. And I think that when we step fully into who we are and we show up authentically, that's when we start to feel really satisfied, because we can be ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, as a style coach, that's my whole perspective. And what
Yeah.
I've seen is that when women, I think when women, I mostly work with women, but when women, men too, I'm sure, when you can step into who you are meant to be authentically, whether it's your career or your style or everything you do, that's empowering. And that's where I think we go inward and we don't need the external validation because we're happy. We're
So
satisfied,
true.
fulfilled.
So true. I mean, I always say that it's not what other people think of us that matters, it's what we think that other people think of us that matters. And honestly, if we can stand with ourselves and we can be that reassuring voice to say, you're okay, you're doing great, like you're wonderful, you're smart, you're, all of these positive things, we can give ourselves that validation. And when we do, we stand solid. You know,
Absolutely.
people can't
Absolutely.
really push you off center when you're there, when you're standing with yourself.
Terry, I feel like this perspective, this is so timely because so many of the conversations I've had lately with friends, with other guests, with just, people in general, it's been about really shifting gears from a more masculine approach of
Mhm.
doing, and achieving to more
Mhm.
being,
Yes.
allowing more pleasure into our lives and doing
Yeah.
things that make us happy and taking time off and indulging ourselves. Can, is tell me about your experience with your clients around that.
Well, I it's funny because when I'm on podcasts and usually at the end they'll ask me like, do you have any last words of wisdom? And the thing that I want people to realize is that you are absolutely worthy exactly as you are. And the more that we lean into that, the more we're in flow. We don't need to strive, we don't need to push. And in fact, when we can, rise from, that area of stress where we're sort of like in fight or flight, we're feeling triggered by things that go on around us. I mean, it's natural, for us to go into fight or flight at some times, and it's necessary for, in some cases, to go there. But in our modern world, we spend more time than is necessary in fight or flight because we are typically not truly threatened in a life or death situation, right? I mean,
Mhm.
maybe if you're on the highway and somebody veers into your lane, yeah, okay, you're going to get that jolt of adrenaline. But a lot of people feel that way all day long at work.
Mhm.
And it's very unlikely that they're truly facing life or death situations. But when we're in that like lower level of energy where we're, hyper vigilant and we're like worried and ruminating or feeling defensive, that is a very energy inefficient way to live. Like it's like walking around with a bucket of energy that has a bunch of holes in the bottom. Like
Mhm.
it's just dripping out. And
Mhm.
then when we're faced with a challenge where we need to, delve into the energy, there's hardly any there
Mhm.
because it's just been dripping out all day long. And
Mhm.
we need to, really examine our beliefs and replace those beliefs with things that support us and serve us well, where we can feel good about ourselves, that we're not, looking around and saying, oh, am I, do people not like me, or am I not fitting in? We just got to say, like, who cares, right? I am who I am worthy, I am special. I have a particular purpose that nobody else has. I don't need to compare myself to other people. And when we can be there, like just solidly in that space where we belong, and honestly, it's our birthright.
Yes.
And then we don't have to, we can patch up the holes in our bucket of energy. And
Yes.
then we can just flow towards the things that we need to do instead of feeling like we're grinding it out. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously, there's a lot of wasted energy when we're grinding versus flowing.
Mhm. Mhm. Amen to that. That's absolutely true. Absolutely. I think, from my own personal experience, I've hit different points throughout my career, my journey where I found like I'm pushing too hard. And I think about a
Mhm.
year ago, in during the midst of the pandemic, our boutique and our whole business had this massive pivot. And we were working really hard and just really had to regroup and go down a different, not a fully different path, but a slightly different path. And I found myself right at a year ago just feeling like, who am I? Why am I doing this? Just depleted, frustrated, fragmented, and it took me, really giving myself a talking to say, okay, let's regroup, let's get back on track, and it's made all the difference. So what are some tips, some things that you can recommend to, if you find yourself feeling that way, what would you recommend to, well, first I should ask, like, how do you even recognize that? And how
Well,
do you pull yourself back if you find that, oh my gosh,
mhm.
that's me?
Well, I mean, first of all, if you're feeling pain, if you've been doing the same thing over and over and you're not getting different results, it might be time to sort of zoom out a little bit and look at the bigger picture of what's going on around you. One of the things that I've seen, I've experienced it personally, and I've seen it with a lot of high achievers that I've worked with, is that typically when they run into obstacles, that they double down. They want to do twice as much as what they were doing. They want to put the pedal to the metal. They want to take on more. And a lot of times that just exacerbates the situation. They just become more and more exhausted and more frustrated, and a lot of times start doubting themselves and thinking, maybe I'm not good enough, I'm not management material, I'm not whatever. And I think that when we have run into the same obstacle a number of times, what we need to do is actually stop and take a deep breath and to zoom out. And it's uncomfortable for people to do that because there's fear that, hey, if I even slow down a little bit, I'm going to get thrown off the treadmill, and I won't be able to keep pace. And it's important for us to recognize that whatever got you here is not going to get you to the next level. You've got to learn to grow and adapt. If you're finding that you're having an emotional response to something, it's important to stop and go deep and say, what's my thought?
Mm-hmm.
When something triggers me and I start to feel sad or angry or defensive, what's the thought in that moment?
Mm-hmm.
Because we can't control our emotion. We need to control what it is that's causing us to feel that way. And we can, if we look at the belief, if we can really, it's in our subconscious, but if we can access it and pull it up to the level of consciousness, and maybe it's that we're saying to ourselves, people don't like me, I'm not good enough, I should be doing something, like the should, that's, try to get rid of the shoulds. Right, don't should on me.
Right.
But if we can raise that to the level of consciousness and ask ourselves, how's this serving me?
Mm-hmm.
Right? If this is causing me to feel anxious or feel bad about myself, it's not serving you.
Yes.
So what do you need to do? What's the thought that you'd rather replace it with? Now, it doesn't happen automatically, but what will happen over time is that you'll find yourself, starting to feel insecure or anxious or whatever, and then you can remind yourself, like, oh yeah, I'm in that situation where I'm worried that people don't like me.
Mm-hmm.
But if you've examined that and said, that's not true, like, people are nice to me at work or in this group or whatever, that I don't think that that's really true.
Mm-hmm.
That's a vestige from third grade when the girls were bullying you on the playground or something, right? You developed that as a coping mechanism to protect yourself at a certain time in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And you've just kept it because it kept you safe way back then, but you haven't really, examined whether that little piece of, subconscious software needs to be updated.
Right.
And, usually there's a big difference between what we're like when we're 8 years old and 38 or 58. We've got more things at our disposal, a lot more coping mechanisms, and we're not as helpless as we might have been when we were young, and we developed sort of a blunt coping mechanism. We can say, even if somebody doesn't like us, we can say, well, yeah, that person doesn't like me, and I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
That's not supposed to be in your life.
Yeah, exactly. Or it could be that that's not true, that just because somebody looks at me a certain way, that doesn't mean they don't like me.
Yeah. I think I'm highly sensitive, and I've been very emotional, and I've got a couple of tools I've come up with to help myself get through things. And I think one of the questions, it sounds like it's very similar to how you frame it, but it's, what am I making this mean?
So true.
And
So
I'm like,
true.
oh yeah, that's not really how it was intended, but I make it mean that,
Mm-hmm.
go down the rabbit hole. And
Yes.
so, yeah, when I can catch myself, when can I ask myself that, instead of just going directly to the feeling, ask myself, what am I making it mean? Well, I make
Yes.
it mean that this, and is this true? No. Is that
Right.
true? No. And it can help bring me back to, okay, I can work through this. I don't need to
Sure.
be in that feeling that, like you said, was, triggered from the third grade when something happened, that has just
Yeah.
become an automatic response.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we also have to realize that, other people's responses are about them. They're
Mm.
not about us, and it can be very easy to take other people's responses personally and
Mhm.
to believe that, like, oh, I made them angry or I made them insecure, and that's their choice, right?
Yes.
Like, we should not allow other people's responses to us to change how we show up.
Mhm.
That's about them. And, like you were saying earlier, sometimes, maybe there's been somebody in our life that in a certain season they were valuable in our
Mhm.
life, but maybe things have changed and it's no longer a relationship that serves us.
Right.
We don't have to, stay attached to people for our whole lives.
For sure. For sure. Terry, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about style.
Woo, okay.
Yes. No, I know that, I know that that's something you talk with your clients about, the professional presence. And you mentioned having blind spots when it comes to your style. Tell me what that means, and what you encourage your clients to do when it comes to their professional style.
Well, I think that I think back in my career, there was a certain point where I worked for the head of marketing for a particular division of the bank where I worked, and he left. He was very, crisp corporate type,
Mhm.
and I was sort of his right hand person. And I'd had a baby and hadn't quite lost all the baby weight, and I threw my hat in the ring for his job, and didn't. It's a little bit of a long story, but I didn't really prepare myself for the interview process. I just kind of figured, oh, people know me. I'd worked there for like 8 years, and I just thought everybody saw me the way I saw myself.
Mm.
And I didn't really step back and look at myself sort of objectively. I have this saying, like, you can't read the label from inside the bottle, right? We just a lot
Mhm.
of times assume, like, oh, well, I'm just being me, and certainly everybody sees me the way I see my. Sorry, um, I'm gonna get her down. Sorry about sorry about that. Hopefully she'll. If anything goes on outside, she's got to have her say. Um, um, so anyway, I was talking about can't read the label from
Label
inside the
from inside the
bottle.
bottle.
Yeah, and sometimes we need to sort of step out and look at ourselves objectively, and it can be a little bit painful sometimes, right? Because in my case, um, I actually got eliminated from the job search process for that, and it hurt a lot because I had stepped up and actually been the de facto leader of the department when my boss left, and it was several months, and to have that taken from me, it was humiliating and it was painful.
Mhm.
And I just decided at that point, I'm going to. It's funny, it's the early 2000s, and there wasn't as much talk about executive and career coaching at that time. But I remember saying to myself, I think there's something called like a career coach or something. So I did a search and I found somebody in my town, and I worked with her for a few months. And she helped me with my confidence because I was quite capable.
Mhm.
I just I hadn't leaned into my potential. I hadn't moved uh, up, and I really mentally promoted myself to that next level. And part of what we worked on was okay, I can do this job. I'm smart enough. I know how to do it. But am I like, is the packaging reflecting that? Right? Because people can't see inside your head or your heart and know that. And you need to make sure that the way that you're showing up reflects your capability. Right? And so I had to face my own insecurities about, I sort of wanted to protect myself and not step out. And she gave me or I guess helped me discover my confidence or build my confidence. And I went out and went shopping and upgraded my wardrobe. I bought, even though I was still losing the baby weight, I bought clothing that fit instead of trying to squish myself into the suits I had before I had my last child. And I got my hair cut, and I just did all of the things to make my outside reflect what my inside was capable of, right? So, and interestingly enough, they offered that job to someone who turned it down. And I guess they didn't have a second candidate that they wanted to offer the job to, so they started the process all over again. And I threw my hat in the ring a second time after I'd gone through all the coaching and with my new clothes and everything, my whole new style. And this time I made it all the way to the finals. It was me and an external candidate. And unfortunately, I didn't get the job offer the second time. I think they just wanted to bring in some new blood. But the day I found out that I didn't get the job, I got a call from a recruiter that started this flurry of activity on the interviewing front. And I ended up within, say, 3 months getting 2 job offers, and I was actively interviewing with a third company. And I ended up taking one of the jobs that brought me here to Chicago. And I came in as the head of marketing for one of their businesses. And it's actually a better job than the one that I didn't get at my old company. And I made a lot more money. And yeah, so I think that, me stumbling and basically falling on my face was a wake up call, not only for me to like step up and inhabit my potential to own it, but also to look at myself and say, is the way that I am showing up at work signaling that I can be trusted with this extra level of responsibility? Because the companies, it was a bank, right? They were pretty conservative. They want to make sure that the people they have in positions of authority reflect the brand of the organization, and that everything is kind of signaling that, hey, here's somebody that's got their act together, right?
Yes, I actually just did a talk yesterday about, how to be your brand. And I think, whether I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, but also a lot of professionals who work in the corporate world. And, I tell people, whether you own your own business or you work with somebody else, you are the brand. You are the reason people do business with you. You are who they have the relationship with. And what you wear tells the world who you are before you open your mouth. And so when you can create an image that matches your message, that matches your brand, it unfolds beautifully.
Yes.
How have you
Yeah.
seen that happen with your clients?
Well, I mean, I think that a lot of times people do have blind spots, right? And it does go back to what I was saying. Like, we know ourselves from the inside out, and a lot of times don't take the time to have reflected back to us how we're really showing up. And so, with my clients, I really help them get clarity on, okay, what's your goal? Right? What is it that you want to happen? Because a lot of times they're at first talking to me about the things that are painful, like, oh, I want this and I'm not getting it, and I'm trying really hard and I'm still not getting it. So, okay, well, let's flip that and say, okay, what's that goal? How do you want to be perceived? What's that level that you want to get to? What is the goal? And then put the roadmap together. And including being clear about, like, what are some of the pitfalls? What are some of the pitfalls that you run into? Maybe using the people around them as context, right? So to say, like, remember back on in Sesame Street, they'd say, like, one of these things is not like the others, right? And
Uh-huh.
it's not to say that, you have to become a cookie cutter,
Right.
but if, you're working in an organization like in banking, that's very tailored,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And if I actually had somebody that worked on a team of mine she was overweight, and she was on our event team, and she had a lot of interaction with very senior level executives that were, hosting these events and that kind of thing. And she wore leggings all the
Mm-hmm.
time. And I understand why she did,
Mm-hmm.
because she probably had a hard time finding clothing that fit. But I coached her manager on having a conversation with her about the fact that we were going to need to be selective about what we assigned to her. And she's very, very ambitious,
Mm-hmm.
and so after a couple of conversations, I think she finally got the message that she was going to need to find a solution
Mm-hmm.
that reflected, because she was really smart and really capable, but her clothing choices were not reflecting that. And in fact, in banking, if I was sending somebody in leggings to the CEO's office, I could expect a call from his
Mm-hmm.
chief of staff to be like, uh-uh, you don't,
Absolutely.
yeah, that's not appropriate.
Yeah, I also own a women's boutique, and it's so fascinating to hear women come in, especially after COVID, after the pandemic. So many women have come in and they've said, "Oh, I've gained weight,
Hmm.
but I can't buy any clothes." And I think a lot
Yeah,
of women struggle with that feeling of, and they may or may not realize that it's basically sending the message that I am not good enough if I'm
right.
not at my quote unquote perfect weight.
Yes.
And I know, that was my story. I struggled with weight and self-image forever, for way too long.
Hmm. Hmm.
But it makes me so sad when women come in and they say, "Well, I've gained 20 pounds and I need to lose
Hmm.
that before
Yes.
I buy any clothes." And the way I look at it is you're basically saying, "No, I'm not worthy of dressing well, of looking
Hmm.
my best, of feeling great now." And then I see them 6 months or a year later, they haven't lost the weight. They still feel
Right.
bad about themselves.
Right.
And so I'm like, it's just a no-win situation.
Why penalize yourself? And it's very interesting too, because I think for the most part, other people don't notice our weight, like we do, and we know, oh, these I can't fit into these jeans anymore. But friends and even people at work, we gain weight gradually, right?
Mhm.
So they're seeing us every day. They're probably not even noticing that we're doing this, but they might start noticing that, we're not looking as crisp as we used to, because we're trying to fit into our size 8 dress when we're really a size 12, right?
Mhm.
I think what we just need to accept and love ourselves no matter what, and not penalize ourselves for things that happen, right? The pandemic, like pretty much everybody has gained weight during the pandemic, because they're
Or
not,
shame yourself.
yeah, just not, there's no reason for it. Um, yeah, I think that we all deserve to look our best no matter what the scale says. Who
Mhm.
cares?
I know, absolutely. I think when you can really step into it and say, "You know what? I'm a size 2 or 22 or 16 or
Yeah,
8." It doesn't matter. I tell my
no,
clients, if you don't like the size you wear, take the scissors and cut it out, because you are the only person who knows what the size is. And,
right,
honestly, with women's clothing, what I see, I'm like, there's very little consistency. You might be a
right.
6 in one pair of pants and a 12 in another.
So true. So
So
true.
it's a
I
whole
learned a lot from that show that I wish it was still on, What Not to Wear. I
yes.
loved that
Oh, that
show.
was
I
so cool.
actually that helped me evolve, um, because they were always saying exactly what you just said, which is get clothing that fits you. Who
Yeah.
cares what size it is? Go and get it tailored. I mean, most people, most women especially, are not the you know mannequin that they use to make the clothing with, right? Like we're all different sizes. And even like celebrities and stuff that we see and we're like, oh, they always look so good. Their clothes are tailored,
They're tailored.
right?
They're wearing 2 layers of Spanx. It's not reality,
Yes.
but it's so
Yeah.
crazy. I feel that with social media and celebrities, we're seeing everybody's highlight reel, or we're
Yes. Yeah.
seeing them when they have a team of stylists and they've been on, the master cleanse for 2 weeks, doing nothing but
Right.
drinking lemon water, and then they've still got 3 pairs of Spanx on and a spray
Hmm.
tan, and they've got these people whose full-time job it is to make them look good.
Right.
And we look at them and think, oh, well, I don't look that good. Something's wrong with me. Like I did that for years. I
Yeah.
made myself wrong. Something's wrong with me, and went down that rabbit hole. And that was no fun. But you're right. I think it's just when we can honor and accept ourselves wherever we are and say, I am good enough, and look
Hmm.
inside and say, who am I on the inside? And express that on the
Yes.
outside. That's powerful.
Well, I think we also end up connecting with others a lot more because we don't have all of that static and all of that, rumination in our heads, like, looking around, oh, is somebody looking at me? Do they think I look too fat? Right? Like, who cares? Like, if we can just show up as we are and with all of our foibles,
Mhm.
it gives other people permission to be human also, right? I
Yeah.
think that that's part of the reason why, people loved Oprah so much, because she would just share her issues. I mean, I can still remember when she went on that, cleanse diet. I mean, maybe this is a little bit undermining what we're talking about, but, she pulled that wagon full of, like, I don't know, 30 pounds of chicken fat out onto the,
Yeah.
that she was like, this used to be on my body,
Yeah.
but she was willing to, let people know things about her that weren't perfect,
Mhm.
and then she eventually got around to just being like, I'm just accepting myself for who I am, and I'm just going to dress the body that I have. And
And she
that's
always looks amazing.
comforting.
Yeah.
Yes, it's comforting to, I just saw a headline the other day, where Queen Latifah said something about, that she's over this whole, focus on obesity. And she's like, I'm
Mhm.
just loving the body that I'm in. And I was like, that's so funny, because I mean, obviously I have no idea how much she weighs, but I've always thought she dressed well and she always looks really good. And I never really thought of, like, oh, she should look like, Sports Illustrated bikini
Mhm.
model or something like that. I always just thought she seemed like a strong woman who loved herself. And I'm glad to see, people like that are in the public eye saying, like, hey, I like myself and I like who I am. And I'm like, okay, yeah, and you're also a beautiful, strong woman. That's awesome.
Yes.
It's good to have role models like that, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. She wears it well, she carries it well, she dresses well,
Yeah.
and she has got some kick-ass confidence.
Yeah, exactly. And we all can lean into that, because we
Absolutely.
can all do that. I think that a lot of times people think that, oh, that's only for certain people. And
Mhm.
guess what? We can all lean into that. We all have that capability to love who we are, to make the best of what we've got. And, I always say, like, comparison is the thief of joy.
Yes,
And
for sure.
and I also say, like, okay, if we each have our own mission, own unique mission based on the gifts that only we were given, and
Mhm.
then why in the world should we compare ourselves to somebody
Yeah,
else,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Because they're here for a different reason than we are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Terry, tell me about your book.
Well, my book is called Winning the Game of Work, and I actually, the seeds of it came when I was leaving my corporate job, and I just was sort of processing a lot of lessons and thoughts that I had about working in the corporate world. And I started blogging. I blogged for about 2 years, and at some point somebody said, how many words do you have? I was like, I have no idea. But I downloaded them and I had about 25,000 words. And I realized that I was well on my way to having a book. So I joined a book writing program. And the book is really about sharing a lot of the hard won lessons that I learned. I mean,
Mhm.
I came from a blue collar background, so I didn't have any guides or mentors in my family that could tell me, like, how to play the game of work. And in fact, I didn't know that it was a game. I just thought, oh, I was good at school. I'll just do the same thing in the workplace that I did at school. And I soon discovered that that's not how it works.
Mhm.
There was something else going on, and it took me a long time to figure out, like, what are the dynamics here, and what do you need to do to get ahead. So I just really wanted to share the lessons that I learned with people so that they don't have to struggle so much, that they can sort of, like I was saying earlier, zoom out and see the dynamics of what's going on, get to know themselves as a player in the game, and make strategic moves so that they can get the things that they want. So I have lots of stories from my own career. I have some stories from some of my clients. They've been anonymized. I don't know if that's a word, but it's not like real names or what do they say? Names have been changed to protect the innocent. And then I also interviewed 11 people who I thought they had really interesting career journeys. And I wanted to share that because I know for a lot of people, they can look at people that have been successful in business or in their careers and think that they were just lucky, or they just found that, hidden elevator that took them to the top floor. And everybody that I interviewed has had, pitfalls and challenges. And I found their stories really inspirational. And I wanted to share those with people so that they could be like, oh, okay, well, maybe I'm just in the valley right now. And around the bend, there's going to be, the path to higher levels, right? Just keep going.
Absolutely. I think we all need to see and hear those stories of inspiration, that people have been where we are, and just keep going.
Yeah, just keep going. Yeah.
Success is ahead. So,
yeah.
Terry, anything else you'd like to share with our listeners today?
Well, I'm going to reiterate what I said a little bit earlier, which is for all of your listeners, just recognize that you are worthy. You were brought to earth with very unique gifts that only you have. Lean into those. Your purpose here is to find your mission and make it happen. You're special. So just recognize that. Never let that go.
So true. So true. Terry, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Michelle, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.